Voices silenced. Clara Moretti moves through the opulent dining room of the Gilded Hearth, balancing a tray laden with crystal glasses. The restaurant's gleaming chandeliers and marble floors serve as a sharp contrast to her modest uniform and weary expression. Clara has spent years in this space, her dreams of becoming a professional singer long abandoned in the wake of family struggles. Tonight, like every night, she quietly performs her duties while humming melodies in her mind, melodies she once hoped to share with the world. Across the room, a particularly loud table draws the attention of both staff and patrons. A group of wealthy elites, led by Elliot Drayton, is celebrating boisterously. Elliot's crisp, tailored suit and commanding presence exude privilege, but his loud laughter carries an undertone of disdain. Sophie Vance, one of the few women at the table, watches the scene with a mix of amusement and discomfort. Unlike her companions, Sophie remembers what it was like to fight for every success, and she often questions why she continues to associate with people like Elliot. As Clara approaches the table to deliver their latest round of expensive whiskey, Elliot's sharp gaze fixes on her. "Well, look who's here," he says with a smirk, drawing the attention of the group. "What's your name, darling?" His tone is mocking, his words calculated to draw laughter from his companions. Clara hesitates, offering a polite, distant smile. "Clara, sir," she replies, her voice steady but subdued. "Clara," Elliot repeats, leaning back in his chair. "Tell me, Clara, do you enjoy working here? Serving people like us?" The table erupts in laughter, and Clara feels the familiar sting of humiliation. She steadies herself, remembering Daniela's advice to not let people like Elliot get under her skin. "Of course, sir," she replies evenly, but the glint in Elliot's eyes tells her he's not finished. He nudges Marcus Tillman, his boisterous hedge fund manager friend, and says, "I bet Clara here has hidden talents. What do you think, Marcus? Perhaps she can sing for us." Clara freezes. The laughter around the table grows louder, and she becomes painfully aware of the curious eyes of other patrons turning toward her. Daniela, standing near the kitchen, catches Clara's gaze, her expression a mix of concern and anger. Sophie leans forward, her brow furrowed. "Elliot, maybe you should." "Oh, come on," Elliot interrupts, waving Sophie off. "We're just having a bit of fun. Clara, why don't you indulge us?" The room feels suffocating, the weight of expectation pressing down on her. For a moment, Clara considers walking away, but something inside her stirs. A quiet defiance, buried under years of resignation, surfaces. Without fully understanding why, she nods. The room falls silent as Clara steps into the center of the dining area. She closes her eyes, steadying her breath, and begins to sing. The first note pierces the silence like a blade, pure and haunting. Her voice, filled with emotion and raw talent, reverberates through the room, stripping away the veneer of luxury and pretense. Elliot's smirk fades. Marcus shifts uncomfortably in his seat, while Sophie's eyes glisten with unshed tears. The other patrons sit frozen, their meals forgotten. Clara's voice seems to reach into each person's soul, pulling out memories, regrets, and dreams long buried. When the final note fades, the room remains silent. Clara opens her eyes, her heart pounding. Without waiting for applause or acknowledgement, she walks back to the kitchen, her head held high. Daniela greets her with a fierce hug, whispering, "You were incredible." Back at the table, Elliot sits motionless, his mind swirling. Sophie looks at him sharply, her admiration for Clara evident in her expression. "Well," Sophie says softly, "I guess you got what you wanted." As the night winds down, Clara leaves the restaurant, the echoes of her performance still ringing in her ears. For the first time in years, she feels something stir within her, a sense of possibility, of doors yet to be opened. The weight of consequences. The sunlight streaming through the cracks in Clara's curtains feels unusually harsh. She wakes up groggy and disoriented, the events of the previous night playing on a loop in her mind. At first, it feels like a dream, a surreal moment when her voice pierced through the noise of wealth and arrogance, leaving a roomful of elites stunned. But as she rubs her eyes and checks her phone, the reality becomes clear. Her notifications are flooded. A video clip of her performance, posted anonymously by a patron, is rapidly gaining traction online. The title reads, "Waitress silences rich bullies with voice of an angel." Clara's heart pounds as she scrolls through the comments. Strangers from all over the world are praising her talent, calling her performance a rare moment of authenticity in an otherwise shallow world. Daniela's name flashes on her screen. She picks up the call, and Daniela's exuberant voice fills her ears. "Clara, have you seen it? You're going viral. People are obsessed with you. Clara presses a hand to her temple. I don't know if that's a good thing, she murmurs. It's amazing. This is your chance to finally put yourself out there. Daniela's enthusiasm is infectious, but Clara's anxiety claws at her. She spent so long trying to blend into the background, to avoid the spotlight, that the sudden attention feels overwhelming. Despite Daniela's encouragement, Clara decides to go about her day as usual. She walks to a nearby cafe to escape the confines of her apartment, but even there, whispers follow her. A young couple at the next table keeps glancing her way, clearly recognizing her. When the barista hands her the coffee, they hesitate before saying, "You're the one from that video, right? You were incredible." Clara manages a polite smile and a quiet, "Thank you," but the encounter leaves her rattled. Fame, even in its most fleeting form, feels alien and intrusive. Meanwhile, across the city, Elliot Drayton sits in his penthouse, nursing a hangover and a bruised ego. He's seen the video, of course. It's impossible to miss when his name is being dragged through the comments. Words like arrogant, entitled, and bully are repeated over and over, and for the first time in years, Elliot feels genuinely humiliated. Sophie Vance, on the other hand, has a different reaction. She watches the clip several times, struck not just by Clara's voice but by the raw emotion behind it. Sophie has always prided herself on recognizing talent, and something about Clara feels special, unpolished but undeniably powerful. She makes a mental note to reach out to Clara, though she's not yet sure how or why. Back at the restaurant, Clara's co-workers greet her with applause and teasing smiles. Our very own superstar, one of the chefs calls out, raising his spatula in salute. Clara laughs nervously, trying to deflect the attention, but she notices a shift in the way people look at her. Not everyone is pleased, however. The restaurant manager pulls Clara aside and speaks in a low, tense voice. "I hope you understand the risk you've put this establishment in. The kind of clientele we serve doesn't appreciate this kind of publicity." Clara's stomach tightens. "I didn't ask for this," she says quietly. "That may be true, but the attention is here, and it's disruptive. Keep your head down and let this blow over." The manager's words linger in her mind as she finishes her shift. When she finally steps outside, Daniela is waiting for her, a mischievous grin on her face. "I've got a surprise for you," she says, holding up her phone. Clara groans. "If it's another video, I don't want to see it." "It's not a video, it's a message. From a talent agent." Clara stares at her in disbelief. Daniela thrusts the phone into her hands, and Clara reads the email. The agent, a woman named Veronica Hughes, is based in the city and claims to have connections in the music industry. She saw the video and wants to meet Clara in person. "This could be it," Daniela says, practically vibrating with excitement. "You have to go." Clara's first instinct is to decline. The idea of stepping into a world she left behind years ago feels daunting, even terrifying. But Daniela's optimism is relentless, and by the end of the night, Clara agrees to at least consider the meeting. Elsewhere, Elliot makes his own plans. Unable to shake the embarrassment of being publicly humiliated, he decides to confront Clara, not out of anger, but out of curiosity. There was something in her voice, something that lingered in his mind long after the performance ended. The chapter ends with Clara sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at Veronica Hughes' email. In her heart, a storm of doubt and hope rages. The question looms, is she ready to face the opportunity that could change her life forever? Doors opening. Clara stands in front of a sleek glass building in the city's arts district, clutching a worn leather notebook filled with songs she had written years ago. The email from Veronica Hughes had been polite yet insistent, and Daniela's encouragement pushed her to take the leap. Now, as she looks at the intimidating modern structure, she wonders if she's walking into a trap or the opportunity of a lifetime. Inside, the atmosphere is both bustling and professional. Veronica Hughes, a poised woman in her late 40s with sharp features and a commanding presence, greets Clara warmly. Veronica's tailored suit and confident handshake project authority, but her eyes hold a spark of genuine excitement. "Clara Moretti," Veronica says with a smile, the woman who silenced a room full of elites. "I've been looking forward to meeting you." Clara feels out of place but manages a small smile. Veronica leads her into a spacious office adorned with framed posters of successful artists. A piano sits in one corner, and Clara can't help but stare at it, memories of her childhood lessons rushing back. "I won't waste your time," Veronica begins. "What you did in that video wasn't just impressive, it was rare. Authentic talent like yours doesn't come around often." Have you ever considered pursuing music professionally? Clara hesitates. I used to. A long time ago. Then it's time to start again, Veronica says firmly. She outlines her vision, a recording of Clara's first single, followed by live performances at intimate venues to build an audience. We're not talking instant stardom, Veronica warns. This is about crafting something real, something lasting. But it starts with you deciding to take the plunge. Clara feels a mix of exhilaration and fear. Part of her wants to say yes immediately, to embrace this unexpected second chance. But the weight of her responsibilities, her bills, her job at the restaurant, her family's needs anchors her. Can I think about it? She asks. Of course, Veronica replies. But don't think too long. Opportunities like this don't wait forever. On her way out, Clara passes through the lobby, still clutching her notebook. Her mind races with possibilities and doubts. She texts Daniela to share the news, and her phone immediately buzzes with a call. You have to do it, Daniela insists. This is your shot, Clara. You can't let it slip away. Clara promises to consider it, but her internal debate rages on. Meanwhile, Elliot Drayton sits in his penthouse, nursing a glass of scotch. The video of Clara's performance has refused to leave his mind, and his curiosity has only grown. For the first time in years, Elliot feels a genuine sense of inadequacy, a realization that his wealth and power couldn't shield him from the raw power of Clara's voice. Unable to ignore his thoughts, Elliot makes a call to one of his assistants. Find out everything you can about Clara Moretti, he instructs, his tone curt but laced with a hint of intrigue. As the day progresses, Elliot receives a report detailing Clara's background. He learns of her humble upbringing, her passion for music, and the sacrifices she made for her family. For reasons he can't quite articulate, Elliot feels a pang of guilt. Her story is a stark contrast to his life of excess and privilege, and it forces him to confront his own emptiness. Later that evening, Clara returns to her apartment, where Daniela is waiting with a bottle of cheap wine and a pizza. They sit on the floor, talking about the meeting with Veronica. Daniela listens intently, her excitement contagious, but she doesn't push Clara too hard. What scares you the most? Daniela asks after a long silence. Clara hesitates. Failing. Or worse, succeeding and losing myself in the process. Daniela nods, understanding. But what's scarier, trying and risking failure, or never trying at all? The question lingers in the air as they finish their meal. The next morning, Clara decides to clear her head by visiting the park amphitheater, her favorite quiet spot. The open space, surrounded by trees, has always felt like a sanctuary. She sits on the edge of the stage, strumming her old guitar and singing softly to herself. Unbeknownst to her, Elliot watches from a distance. He had instructed his driver to bring him to the park after learning it was a place Clara frequented. As he listens to her unguarded performance, something shifts within him. Her music feels raw and unfiltered, a stark contrast to the curated world he inhabits. Elliot steps closer, and the sound of his footsteps startles Clara. She stops playing and looks up, her face a mix of confusion and irritation. What are you doing here? She asks, her voice cautious. I came to apologize, Elliot says simply. For what happened at the restaurant. Clara raises an eyebrow, skeptical. Why would you care? Elliot hesitates. Because I was wrong. And because your performance, it made me realize how shallow I've become. Clara stares at him, trying to gauge his sincerity. Part of her wants to dismiss him outright, but another part is curious about this unlikely encounter. Apology accepted, she says eventually, her tone neutral. But that doesn't mean I owe you anything. I'm not asking for anything, Elliot replies. I just wanted you to know that your voice, it's extraordinary. He leaves without another word, leaving Clara both perplexed and slightly vindicated. That night, Clara sits at her kitchen table, staring at Veronica's business card. Daniela's words echo in her mind. What's scarier, trying or never trying? With a deep breath, she picks up her phone and dials the number. Veronica? It's Clara. I'm in. Into the spotlight. The recording studio buzzes with quiet activity as Clara steps through the door, her guitar slung over her shoulder. The sleek, soundproofed walls and intricate setup of microphones and mixers make her feel out of place. Veronica Hughes is already there, speaking with a sound engineer. She greets Clara with a warm smile. Welcome to your first session, Veronica says, her tone both reassuring and businesslike. I've booked some of the best people to help bring your music to life. This is where it all starts. Clara nods, clutching her guitar tightly. She spent the last week preparing for this moment, combing through her old notebook to select the songs that feel most authentic. But now that she's here, doubt creeps in again. What if her songs aren't good enough? Veronica seems to sense her hesitation. Relax, she says. Today's about finding your sound. There's no right or wrong here. The sound engineer, a kind-looking man named Ben, sets up Clara's equipment. Whenever you're ready, he says, gesturing to the recording booth. Clara steps inside, feeling the slight chill of the soundproofed space. She adjusts the headphones and strums a few chords on her guitar, the familiar vibrations grounding her. The first song she chooses is one she wrote years ago, a piece about longing and resilience. As she begins to sing, her voice fills the room with a raw, aching beauty. Ben's expression shifts from polite attentiveness to genuine admiration. Veronica nods, clearly impressed. When Clara finishes, the silence on the other side of the glass is almost as powerful as her song. Then Veronica presses the intercom button. That was stunning, she says. Let's take it again, and this time, let the emotion drive you even more. The session stretches into hours, with Clara recording multiple takes and experimenting with slight changes to melody and phrasing. By the time they finish for the day, she's both exhausted and exhilarated. Veronica pulls her aside as she's packing up. You've got something special, Veronica says. But talent alone isn't enough in this industry. If you're going to make it, you'll need to be ready for everything, critics, pressure, even the temptation to give up. Clara nods, taking the words to heart. That evening, Clara meets Daniela at their favorite diner. Daniela listens eagerly as Clara recounts her first day in the studio. I can't believe this is really happening, Clara says, a small smile playing on her lips. I can, Daniela replies. You're finally getting what you deserve. But as they talk, Clara's phone buzzes with a notification. Another article about her performance at the Gilded Hearth has been published, this one digging into her personal life. Clara feels a pang of anxiety. Her newfound attention is starting to feel invasive. Don't let them get to you, Daniela says firmly. They'll try to twist your story, but you know the truth. Focus on the music. Across town, Elliot Drayton sits in a dimly lit bar, sipping his drink. He's been following Clara's rise from a distance, torn between fascination and envy. His usual crowd of friends has been avoiding him since the video went viral, their laughter now laced with mockery. Sophie Vance is the only one who still speaks to him with any semblance of respect. You're obsessed with her, aren't you? Sophie asks as she joins him at the bar. Elliot frowns. I'm not obsessed. I'm curious. Curious enough to hire a private investigator, Sophie says pointedly. Elliot's face tightens. I wanted to understand what makes her different. Why she affects people the way she does. Sophie shakes her head. Maybe because she's real. Something you haven't been in years. Her words sting, but Elliot doesn't argue. As Clara prepares for her second studio session, she receives a surprise visitor. Veronica greets her in the lobby with a broad smile. Someone's here to meet you, she says. Clara turns to see a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a weathered guitar case. He introduces himself as James Fletcher, a seasoned songwriter who's worked with some of the biggest names in the industry. I saw your video, James says. You've got a gift, but I think you could use some guidance. Veronica asked me to step in if you're willing. Clara feels a mix of excitement and trepidation. Collaborating with someone of James' caliber is both an honor and a challenge. I'd love to, she says finally. The session with James is a turning point. His suggestions push Clara out of her comfort zone, encouraging her to explore new vocal techniques and storytelling methods. By the end of the day, they've reworked one of her songs into something that feels even more powerful. You've got something rare, James tells her. Don't let anyone water it down. That night, Clara returns to her apartment and pulls out her notebook. She flips through pages of lyrics and scribbled notes, some dating back to her teenage years. For the first time in years, she feels a sense of purpose, a belief that her voice and her stories matter. But just as she's settling into this new sense of hope, her phone buzzes again. This time, it's a message from an unknown number. I saw your video. I'd like to talk. Elliot Drayton. Clara stares at the screen, her emotions swirling. She knows she should ignore him, but something about the message feels different. Less arrogant, more introspective. Against her better judgment, she replies with a single word, why? A few moments later, his response comes through. Because I think you're about to change everything. Unlikely encounters. Clara stares at Elliot Drayton's message, her mind racing with conflicting emotions. She barely knows the man, and her only interaction with him had been humiliating and infuriating. Yet his words linger. "I think you're about to change everything." Against her instincts, she types a response. "What do you want from me?" The reply comes almost instantly: "To talk. Nothing more. Can we meet?" Clara hesitates but finally agrees, suggesting a cafe near her apartment. She chooses a time early in the morning, hoping the quiet hour will provide her some clarity. The next day, Clara arrives at the cafe, her stomach knotted with nerves. She spots Elliot seated by the window, looking almost unrecognizable without his usual air of arrogance. His suit is still impeccable, but his expression is softer, less guarded. "Thank you for coming," Elliot says as she sits down. Clara doesn't bother with pleasantries. "Why are you here?" Elliot exhales, looking down at his coffee. "I wanted to apologize again for everything. Not just that night at the restaurant, but for the way I've lived my life. Your performance, it woke me up. It made me see how hollow everything has been." Clara raises an eyebrow. "And you think talking to me will fix that?" "No," he admits. "But I wanted you to know how much your voice affected me. It's been a long time since I've felt anything real." Clara studies him, trying to discern his motives. Despite her skepticism, his words seem genuine. "Okay," she says finally. "Apology accepted. But I don't see what else there is to say." "There's more," Elliot says cautiously. "I've been thinking about your potential. What you could do with the right resources." Clara narrows her eyes. "If this is about money, I'm not interested." "It's not about money," Elliot insists. "It's about opportunity. You have a gift, Clara. I want to help you share it with the world. No strings attached." Clara leans back, crossing her arms. "You really expect me to believe that?" Elliot shakes his head. "No, but maybe I can prove it to you. Let me sponsor your next steps, studio time, promotion, whatever you need. I don't want anything in return. Just the chance to do something meaningful for once." Clara considers his offer, unsure if she can trust him. "I already have people helping me," she says cautiously. "Veronica Hughes is guiding me, and I'm building this from the ground up." Elliot nods. "That's good. But if you ever need more, if there's something you can't do alone, my offer stands." Clara doesn't commit to anything, but she leaves the cafe feeling strangely unsettled. Elliot's sudden humility and interest in her journey feel out of character, but she can't deny that his words seem sincere. Back at the studio, Clara channels her emotions into her music. Working with Veronica and James has been transformative, and her songs are beginning to take shape in ways she never imagined. One track in particular becomes a favorite among the team, a haunting ballad about resilience and self-discovery. "People are going to love this," James says as they listen to the playback. "It's raw, honest, and unforgettable." Clara smiles, but the weight of her growing visibility looms over her. The video of her performance at the Gilded Hearth continues to circulate, drawing both praise and scrutiny. Critics are already questioning whether she's a one-hit wonder or if she has the substance to sustain a career. One night, as she scrolls through her social media feed, Clara stumbles upon a new article about her rise to fame. To her shock, it includes details about her family and her personal life, things she never shared publicly. She immediately calls Veronica. "How do they know this about me?" Clara asks, her voice trembling. "It's the nature of fame," Veronica says gently. "People dig into your past. You'll need to decide how much of it you're willing to share or fight to keep private." Clara hangs up, feeling a surge of frustration and vulnerability. She didn't ask for this attention, and now it feels like her life is no longer her own. Elsewhere, Elliot finds himself grappling with his own issues. Sophie Vance, ever the voice of reason, confronts him during a dinner meeting. "So, what's the deal with you and Clara?" Sophie asks bluntly. "There's no deal," Elliot replies, pushing his plate aside. I see something in her. Something real." "Real?" Sophie scoffs. "That's rich coming from you." Elliot glares at her. "I'm trying to be better, Sophie. Maybe you should try supporting that instead of tearing me down." Sophie studies him, her expression softening slightly. "If you're serious about helping her, don't make it about you. She doesn't need another person trying to control her life." Elliot nods, taking her words to heart. In the days that follow, Clara's focus remains on her music. She pours her energy into rehearsals and songwriting, finding solace in the creative process. But the outside world continues to press in. Paparazzi begin to show up near the studio, and strangers approach her in public, asking for autographs or selfies. One afternoon, as she walks home from the studio, a man steps out of the shadows and shoves a microphone in her face. Clara, what do you have to say about the rumors that a wealthy benefactor is funding your career? Clara freezes, caught off guard. I don't know what you're talking about, she says, pushing past him. The encounter leaves her shaken. Later, she confronts Veronica. Are people saying Elliot Drayton is behind this? Rumors spread fast, Veronica admits. But if he's not involved, there's nothing to worry about. Clara nods, but the incident leaves her wary. She realizes that her connection to Elliot, however tenuous, could complicate her journey. The chapter closes with Clara sitting at her apartment, strumming her guitar. Her phone buzzes with a message from Veronica. The first single is ready. Are you ready to share it with the world? Clara takes a deep breath, staring at the text. The question looms over her, both thrilling and terrifying. The threshold. The studio is alive with anticipation as Clara walks into the familiar recording room. Today is the day. The final version of her first single, a haunting ballad she wrote years ago, is ready. It feels surreal. What was once a deeply personal song, tucked away in her notebook, is now polished, prepared, and poised for release to the world. But the weight of the moment hangs heavily over her. Veronica and James are already there, standing by the mixing board, talking quietly as Clara steps inside. The final mix plays softly in the background, and Clara can't help but feel a wave of emotion. This is her voice, her story, now set in stone for everyone to hear. You ready? Veronica asks, her eyes sharp but warm. Clara hesitates for only a second before nodding. I think so. James smiles at her reassuringly. This is the moment you've worked for, Clara. Don't hold back now. Clara breathes in deeply, steadying herself. She walks up to the microphone, adjusting it with practiced hands. Her heart races. This song is the key to everything. The validation she's craved, the beginning of her dreams finally taking shape. But it also marks the end of her anonymity, the end of the quiet, simple life she once knew. As the track begins, she closes her eyes and starts to sing. Each note is filled with vulnerability, and she lets the lyrics flow from her heart. This isn't just a song. It's her story, her past, and her hopes for the future. Her voice carries, clear and true, filling the studio with the raw emotion that has defined her music from the start. The final note fades, and for a moment, there is nothing but silence. When it's broken, it's with the sound of applause from James and Veronica. Clara opens her eyes, her chest tight with emotion. She's made it. That was perfect, James says, his voice full of admiration. You've got it, Clara. This song is going to resonate with people. Veronica is quick to add, we'll have the press release ready by tomorrow. It's time to share your music with the world. Clara nods, her mind spinning. It's happening. This is what she's wanted, what she's worked for, but she can't shake the unease that settles in her chest. The attention, the exposure, it's all coming faster than she ever anticipated. Later that evening, as Clara walks home, she's unable to shake the nagging feeling of being watched. The streets are bustling with their usual crowd, but her heightened awareness makes her feel like every passerby is a potential paparazzi or fan eager to catch a glimpse of her. The world has already started to change, and she can feel it pulling at the edges of her life. Her phone buzzes in her pocket. It's a message from Daniela. The single's dropping tomorrow. You ready for this? Clara pauses for a moment, staring at the screen. A mix of nerves and excitement floods her. She responds with a simple, I think so, but deep down, she knows that there's no going back now. The world will soon know her name. The next day, as Clara arrives at the studio for another round of sessions, she's bombarded with notifications from her phone. The single has gone live. A flood of excitement and nerves rushes through her. The reality of this moment hits hard. She isn't just a waitress anymore. She's a budding artist, and the entire world is about to hear her voice. She steps into the studio, and Veronica is already there, waiting with a broad smile. The launch was a success. We're getting tons of coverage, blogs, social media, radio play. People are talking about you. Clara feels a flutter of anxiety. How much are they saying? Enough to get you noticed, Veronica says. The attention is starting to build, and we'll keep the momentum going. But Clara's mind drifts, her thoughts once again returning to the unease she's been feeling. The pressure is mounting. It's one thing to be recognized for her talent, but she can already sense the expectations weighing heavily on her. People want her to be more than just an artist. They want a story, a persona. The phone buzzes again. It's a message from Elliot. I heard the song. You've got something real. I know you're scared, but trust me, you're going to be huge. Clara stares at the message, a sense of discomfort creeping over her. She doesn't respond. Later that evening, Clara sits in her apartment, scrolling through the comments on social media. Some of them are filled with praise, others with skepticism. She reads a comment that particularly stings, another viral moment waiting to fade. What's the point of giving this girl a platform when she'll just disappear like the rest of them? It's a harsh reminder of the fragility of her newfound fame. The world is fickle, and no one can predict how long her moment in the spotlight will last. But then there are the comments from people who connect with her music on a deep, personal level. Some share their own struggles and dreams, others just thank her for the honesty in her lyrics. These are the ones that stick with Clara, that remind her why she started in the first place. The following week is a whirlwind. Clara spends long hours in the studio, rehearsing for her first live performance. The pressure intensifies as she realizes that this will be her first time singing in front of a crowd since her fateful performance at the Gilded Hearth. Elliot's presence is felt even more in the background. His offer of sponsorship still lingers in her mind. He's given her the space she needs, but Clara can't shake the sense that his interest in her is more complex than he lets on. She's not sure if she can trust him or his motivations. One afternoon, as Clara steps out of the studio to grab coffee, she's approached by a group of reporters. The questions come fast, invasive, and relentless. Clara, how do you feel about your sudden rise to fame? Do you think you'll be able to handle the pressure of stardom? Is Elliot Drayton backing your career? She feels the weight of the questions pressing on her, each one stripping away more of her privacy. She tries to keep her composure, but it's becoming harder to do so. The world is watching, and it feels like everything she does is under scrutiny. That night, Clara calls Daniela. "I'm starting to lose control," she admits. "I wanted this, but it feels like everything is happening too fast." Daniela is silent for a moment, and then responds with a soft, "You're doing great. But you can't let it consume you, Clara. You're still the same person you were before all of this. Don't lose yourself." Clara stares at her reflection in the mirror, trying to see herself, the woman who once sang in secret, the woman who dreamed of something more. But now, the weight of the world is on her shoulders, and she's not sure if she can carry it for much longer. The chapter closes with Clara standing at the edge of the stage, looking out at an empty theater. The lights are dim, and the quiet hum of the crowd outside the venue is a distant murmur. She knows this is her moment, but it feels like she's on the precipice of something she can't quite control. The question remains, will she rise to meet the challenge, or will the pressure overwhelm her? The weight of the stage. Clara stands backstage, the dim light from the dressing room casting long shadows across her face. Her hands tremble as she adjusts her microphone, her fingers brushing over the smooth surface of her guitar. The sound of the crowd outside, eager, buzzing, reaches her through the thick walls. Tonight is her first live performance, a critical moment that will define not only her career, but her identity as an artist. The anticipation feels suffocating. She's been preparing for weeks, running through the set list with James and Veronica, rehearsing every note, every word, trying to calm the storm of nerves inside her. But nothing can fully prepare her for the moment when she steps out into the bright lights and faces the sea of unknown faces waiting for her. "You're ready," Veronica's voice breaks through her thoughts. Clara turns to find the manager standing in the doorway, her expression calm but proud. "Just breathe, Clara. The world is waiting to hear what you've got." Clara forces a smile, but inside, doubt claws at her. What if she falters? What if the audience doesn't connect with her the way the online world did? The pressure of the moment threatens to crush her, but she knows she can't turn back now. The stage manager pokes his head in. 5 minutes, he announces. Clara's heart skips a beat. She nods, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Okay," she murmurs. As she steps into the corridor leading toward the stage, the sound of the crowd grows louder. She can hear the chatter, the murmurs of excitement, the clinking of glasses from the bar area. It's not the same as the Gilded Hearth, a crowd of millionaires and snobs, but it feels just as overwhelming. This is her first real audience, the people who will judge her on more than just a viral video. They'll judge her as an artist, a performer. "Clara!" Daniela's voice calls from behind. Clara turns to see her friend, wide-eyed with excitement. "You're going to be amazing. Just remember, they're here to see you." Clara smiles weakly. "I don't know if I can do this." "You already are," Daniela says, her eyes glinting with unwavering belief. "You've been doing this your whole life. You just didn't know it until now." Clara nods, feeling a flicker of hope in her chest. She knows Daniela is right. This isn't new. This is her dream, her calling. All she needs to do is let go and trust herself. The spotlight feels blinding as Clara steps out onto the stage. For a brief moment, she can't see anything beyond the glow of the lights. But slowly, her eyes adjust to the dim figures in the audience, their faces obscured by shadows but their presence unmistakable. The sound of the crowd is muted, almost as if it's coming from underwater. She feels like she's on the edge of something monumental, but she's not sure if she's ready to dive in. She lifts her guitar and strums the opening chords of her first song. The familiar notes fill the space, but her voice catches in her throat. She pauses for a moment, her breath ragged. The nerves are overwhelming. And then she remembers why she's here, why she's doing this. With a deep breath, she continues, her voice trembling at first, but growing stronger with each line. She sings the words with every ounce of emotion she has, the lyrics flowing like a confession, a declaration of who she is. The song is raw, real, an anthem of her struggles, her journey, and the courage it took to stand here in front of a crowd, doing the one thing she was always afraid to do. As she finishes the first song, there's a moment of silence. Clara's chest tightens, the fear of rejection almost unbearable. And then, the crowd erupts into applause. It's not a massive roar, but it's enough to make Clara's heart swell with relief. She doesn't need perfection. She just needs them to listen, to hear her. The next few songs flow more easily, her nerves calming as she settles into the rhythm of the performance. Her voice is steady, confident now, and the connection with the audience deepens with every passing moment. She sees faces light up as they recognize her songs, some even singing along. For the first time in a long while, Clara feels like she belongs. Halfway through the set, Clara is struck by a sudden thought. She's doing this. She's living the life she once only dreamed of. She can feel the weight of the stage beneath her feet, but it doesn't feel so heavy anymore. The music is no longer just a path to validation. It's her escape, her freedom. After the final song, Clara steps back from the microphone, her heart racing. The applause is louder now, a swelling tide of appreciation and excitement. She bows, her face flushed with exhaustion and elation. When she finally exits the stage, the backstage area is a blur of lights, people, and congratulations. Veronica and James are waiting for her, both smiling proudly. "You did it," Veronica says. "You were incredible." James claps her on the back. "You're a natural, Clara. This is just the beginning." Clara grins, a sense of disbelief still lingering. "I can't believe it. I actually did it." Before she can respond further, her phone buzzes. It's a message from Daniela. "You were amazing. The world is going to fall in love with you." Clara stares at the message, a warmth spreading through her chest. She's finally here. She's made it. The following days are a blur of media interviews, press conferences, and social media buzz. Clara's single climbs the charts, and she begins receiving offers from record labels, endorsement deals, and concert promoters. Her world has shifted in an instant, and the attention is both exhilarating and overwhelming. But with the excitement comes pressure. Clara feels the weight of expectations grow heavier with each passing day. The public wants more from her, and the world she's stepped into is unforgiving. She's no longer just a waitress with a dream. She's a brand, a commodity. And with that comes the harsh reality of the industry. People want to control her narrative, shape her image, and push her into the mold they've created. Clara begins to pull back, feeling increasingly isolated as the demands of fame encroach on her personal space. She still loves the music, the creative freedom it gives her, but the other side of the business is suffocating. One evening, as Clara steps out of a meeting with her new management team, she's approached by a familiar figure. Elliot stands a few feet away, his expression unreadable. "You did great last night," he says, his voice steady. "The world is taking notice." Clara doesn't respond at first, her mind racing with a mix of emotions. Finally, she speaks. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore, Elliot. It's all happening so fast. I'm starting to lose myself in all of this." Elliot's gaze softens. "I know what you mean. I've been there." He pauses for a moment before continuing. "But you can still control your own path. Don't let anyone tell you who you should be." Clara looks at him, unsure whether to trust him or not. But something in his eyes, a quiet sincerity, makes her pause. "I just need to figure out who I am in all of this," she admits. Elliot nods. "You will. Just don't forget that you're still you, no matter how much things change." As he walks away, Clara stands still for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. She knows the road ahead will be difficult, but for the first time, she feels like she has the strength to navigate it. A new reality. Clara's first few weeks of success are a blur. The whirlwind of interviews, performances, and meetings leaves her little time to breathe. Her single continues to rise on the charts, and her social media presence explodes with fans praising her raw talent and vulnerability. Despite the excitement, there's an undercurrent of anxiety that Clara can't shake. The music industry is moving faster than she ever imagined, and with it comes a pressure she hadn't anticipated. She's no longer just Clara, the waitress with a hidden dream. She's Clara Moretti, a rising star in the music world, and that brings a level of scrutiny she's unprepared for. The media writes about her every move, dissecting her past and projecting their own narratives onto her. One evening, as Clara sits in her apartment, scrolling through her phone, she stumbles across an article. It's titled, Clara Moretti, From the Gilded Hearth to the Spotlight, Is She Ready for the Pressure? The article is a mix of praise and skepticism, with quotes from music critics questioning whether Clara's success is built on authenticity or merely a viral moment. It's a harsh reminder that the public loves to build people up only to tear them down when they're too high. Clara sighs and puts the phone down. She's exhausted physically, mentally, and emotionally. The constant demands and the endless expectations are taking their toll. She misses the simplicity of her old life, the quiet moments she spent alone with her music, writing without worrying about how it would be received. But that life is gone now. The reality of who she is becoming is starting to sink in. She's not just a singer anymore, she's a product, a brand, and with that comes a loss of privacy. Her first live tour is announced, a series of intimate shows in major cities to promote her single and introduce her music to new audiences. The tour is a major milestone, but Clara can't help but feel a mix of excitement and dread. Performing live is one thing, but being on the road, surrounded by handlers and fans, is an entirely different beast. As she packs her bags for the first leg of the tour, Veronica calls to check in. "Everything's ready," Veronica says. "This is the next step. Your team is behind you, and we've got some major press lined up. You're going to crush it, Clara." "I'm ready," Clara replies, but even as she says the words, she's not sure she believes them. She's not just nervous about performing. She's nervous about losing herself in the process. The first performance of the tour takes place in a small, packed venue in Chicago. Clara steps on stage, her heart pounding in her chest. The lights are bright, and the crowd's energy is electric. The moment she begins to sing, she feels the familiar rush of emotion, the connection between her and the audience that's become her greatest source of strength. But as the night progresses, Clara starts to feel the weight of the performance. The expectations are high, and every word, every note is scrutinized. She's acutely aware of the cameras in the crowd, the social media posts that will follow, the critics who will dissect her every move. It's as if the room is closing in on her. Halfway through the set, Clara falters. She misses a note, something small but noticeable. She feels the pang of self-doubt before she can recover, but the brief lapse feels like a personal failure. She pushes through the rest of the show, finishing strong, but when the lights dim and the crowd erupts into applause, Clara can't shake the feeling of inadequacy. Backstage, her team is quick to congratulate her, but Clara doesn't feel the rush of victory. She feels exhausted, disconnected. It's not just the performance. It's the fact that she's starting to question whether this is what she really wants. Later that night, as she lies in her hotel room, Clara can't sleep. The weight of the tour, the media, the constant pressure to be perfect, it's all starting to feel like too much. She wishes she could go back to the quiet moments, the days when she could sing for herself, without worrying about how the world would see her. The next morning, Clara calls Daniela. "I don't know if I can do this," she admits, her voice shaking. "I thought I wanted this, but it's not what I expected. I feel like I'm losing myself in all of this." Daniela's response is calm but firm. "You've been chasing this dream for years, Clara. It's not going to be easy, but that doesn't mean you're supposed to give up. You have to stay true to yourself. The world can't define you, you do." Clara takes a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Daniela's words offer some comfort, but they don't erase the gnawing fear inside her. She wants to keep going, to prove to herself and everyone else that she deserves this, but the pressure is suffocating. In the following days, Clara finds herself withdrawing from her team, spending more time alone in her hotel rooms. She's tired, physically and emotionally, and she can feel the strain of constantly performing, constantly smiling, and constantly being watched. Her mind starts to wander back to the day she first sang at the Gilded Hearth. That moment, when she was simply a waitress, was simpler. There was no pressure, no expectations, just her and her voice. One afternoon, While in New York for the next show, Clara takes a walk through Central Park. She breathes in the cool air, trying to clear her head. The park is serene, a peaceful contrast to the chaos of her life. She finds a bench and sits, her thoughts swirling. It's in this quiet moment that she feels a sense of clarity. She remembers why she started, why she sang in the first place. It wasn't for the fame, the money, or the validation. It was because music was the one thing that made her feel alive, the one thing that allowed her to connect with herself. Later that evening, Clara stands backstage again, preparing for the next show. This time, she feels different. There's a renewed sense of purpose, a determination to be herself, no matter what the world expects of her. She doesn't need to be perfect. She just needs to be true to herself. As she steps onto the stage, the crowd's roar welcomes her, but this time, Clara is ready. She takes a deep breath, picks up her guitar, and begins to sing, not for anyone else, but for herself. The notes are clearer, the emotion deeper, and when the final chord rings out, Clara feels something shift inside her. She may be in the spotlight, but for the first time, she's in control. The chapter ends with Clara walking off stage, her heart still racing, but filled with a sense of peace she hasn't felt in a long time. She knows the journey ahead will be challenging, but she's no longer afraid. She has found her voice, and this time it's hers alone. The weight of the world. Clara's second leg of the tour feels different. The pressure is still there, but something within her has shifted. Each performance is more focused, more deliberate. She's no longer trying to meet anyone's expectations. She's simply expressing herself. The crowds respond positively, and she feels a quiet pride in her work, but the exhaustion continues to creep in, each show leaving her a little more drained than the last. Back at the hotel in Los Angeles, Clara stands in front of the mirror, wiping away the remnants of makeup, her face pale from the constant travel. The tour is beginning to take its toll on her physically and emotionally. She wants to go home, to sleep in her own bed, to reconnect with the people she loves, but there's always another show, another interview, another demand. The once exhilarating rush of performing now feels more like a constant obligation, a duty that she can't escape. Her phone buzzes, breaking her reverie. It's a message from Veronica. You've got another meeting tomorrow with a major record label. They're interested in signing you for an album deal. They're excited about your next steps. Clara stares at the message, her mind immediately shifting to the next milestone. A part of her feels elated. The chance to sign with a major label could solidify her career, take her music to the next level. But another part feels overwhelmed. Signing that deal would mean more control, more expectations, and less freedom. For a moment, Clara wonders if this is the right path. Is this what she truly wants, or is she just swept along by the current, afraid to stop and reconsider where she's heading? She's no longer sure of the answer. The next day, Clara meets with the label executives in a sleek, modern office. The room is filled with polished professionals, all eager to impress her, to convince her that their label is the right place for her. The conversation is smooth, with glowing talk of global tours, branding opportunities, and the potential to sell millions of records. But underneath it all, Clara can't shake the nagging feeling that this might be more about numbers than her art. "We're committed to helping you grow as an artist," one of the executives says, his tone smooth and practiced. "You've got the talent, Clara. We just need to refine it, market it properly, and take it to a global stage. Think about the doors this could open." Clara nods, but her thoughts are elsewhere. She remembers her first meeting with Veronica, when the industry felt like an opportunity to finally be herself, to share her voice with the world. Now, everything feels like a transaction. She knows that signing with a major label would bring success, but at what cost? As the meeting concludes, the executives offer her a contract, one that promises everything she's ever dreamed of, but also everything she fears. She looks at the document, the words swimming before her eyes. Signing it would mean committing herself fully to this life, this world she's not sure she can keep up with. That night, Clara sits alone in her hotel room, her mind racing. She knows what the industry expects from her. Another album, more tours, more songs about love and heartache. But what about her? What about the music she wants to make, the stories she wants to tell? She thought she could navigate this world on her own terms, but now, it seems like the terms are being set for her. She picks up her phone and calls Daniela, the one person who always understands. "I got the offer," Clara says, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "The big label. The one I've been working toward. But now, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's mine anymore. It feels like they just want to mold me into something I'm not." Daniela's voice is calm but firm. You've always known the price of fame, Clara. It's about finding the balance. The world will try to shape you, but that doesn't mean you have to let it. You're the one who gets to decide how much of yourself you give away. Clara runs a hand through her hair, feeling the weight of her choices. I thought this was all I wanted. I thought the music would be enough. But now it feels like it's slipping through my fingers. I'm afraid of what I'll lose. Daniela pauses for a moment, then speaks with quiet conviction. You won't lose yourself, Clara, as long as you remember why you started in the first place. Music is about more than success or fame. It's about connection, expression. Don't forget that. Clara nods, even though Daniela can't see her. For the first time in a long while, she feels a flicker of hope, a reminder of why she began this journey. Maybe the fame, the industry, the deals, they don't have to define her. The next day, Clara walks into the meeting with the label executives. She's made a decision. I appreciate the offer, she says, her voice steady, but I'm not ready to sign yet. I need to focus on making the music I want to make, not the music I think you want me to make. I'm going to take my time, find my path, and decide where I want to go from here. The executives exchange glances, clearly disappointed, but Clara stands her ground. She knows this might be the hardest choice she's made yet, but it's the one that feels right. As Clara walks out of the building, the weight of the decision begins to lift. She may not have a clear path forward, but she knows she's staying true to herself. For the first time in months, she feels free. The tour continues, and Clara finds a new rhythm in her performances. She's not just going through the motions anymore. She's living in each moment, connecting with her audience in a way she never has before. Her music becomes a reflection of who she is, not who the world expects her to be. In the quiet moments after the shows, as Clara sits on the edge of her bed, her guitar in hand, she knows she's on the right path. The world is still watching, still waiting, but for the first time, Clara is in control. She's ready for whatever comes next, knowing that as long as she stays true to her music, she can weather anything. The calm before the storm. The decision Clara made to hold off on signing with the major label begins to ripple through her life. At first, there's a sense of peace, an unexpected calm. She feels freer than she has in months, no longer tethered to the unrelenting pressures of the music industry's expectations. The shows continue, but each performance now feels like an expression of her true self, unburdened by the shadow of fame or success. The crowd still pack the venues, but Clara no longer performs for approval. She sings for the music, for the connection, for herself. Her authenticity shines through in each note, and it's clear that her audience feels it. Fans write messages on social media, saying how much her music has helped them through hard times, how they relate to the rawness and truth in her lyrics. For the first time, Clara starts to believe that maybe her music is bigger than herself, that it's reaching people in ways she never imagined. But just as Clara starts to regain a sense of peace, the weight of her decision begins to settle in. The label hasn't given up on her. They continue to call, sending emails, requesting meetings, offering new incentives. The pressure is always there, lurking just beyond the corner, reminding Clara that success in the industry means compromise. She finds herself in a quiet hotel room in Seattle, alone after the show, staring at the endless emails and texts. The promise of fame and fortune still hovers, always tempting her to take the next step, to sign the deal and let the industry dictate her path. But Clara knows she can't give in. Not now. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling interview session, Clara takes a break in the studio. She's been asked the same questions over and over, her answers dissected and analyzed. The facade of being a pop star feels more like a role she's playing rather than an identity she's inhabiting. She escapes to a corner of the studio, her guitar resting in her lap, and begins to play. The simple strumming of her guitar calms her nerves, grounding her in something real. She begins to hum a melody that's been in her head for weeks, a song about the pressure of being someone else's idea of success. The lyrics come easily, honest, vulnerable, and raw, as they always are when she's not worried about what the world will think. As the song takes shape, Clara realizes that this is her next move. She doesn't need to sign with a label to prove her worth. She has the music, she has her voice, and most importantly, she has her freedom. The world may want to label her as the next big thing, but Clara knows now that she's not just a trend or a moment. She's an artist, and it's up to her to define her future. Back home in her apartment, Clara sits on the edge of her bed, her mind buzzing with the possibilities. She's made the decision to go independent, no label, no middleman. She'll work with the people she trusts, the ones who believe in her art as much as she does. She'll release her music on her terms. It's a bold move, a risky one, but it feels right. The industry may be a machine, but she's not a cog in it. She's the creator. She calls Daniela to share the news. "I'm doing it," Clara says, her voice filled with conviction. "I'm going to release my album independently." Daniela's voice lights up with excitement. "That's incredible. You're doing it on your own, Clara." "I knew you would." Clara smiles, grateful for her friend's unwavering belief. "It's scary as hell, but I have to try. I can't let anyone else decide what my story is going to be. This is my story to tell." The decision isn't easy, and Clara knows there will be obstacles. Without the resources of a major label, the road ahead will be more challenging. But she's ready. She'll take control of her narrative, her career, and most importantly, her music. The following weeks are a blur of planning and preparation. Clara enlists the help of James and a few trusted friends from her old circle. People who know her, who believe in her from the beginning. Together, they begin to craft the album, each song a reflection of her journey, her struggles, and her growth. It's not a perfect process. There are moments of doubt, moments when Clara wonders if she's making the right decision. But in the end, every song feels like a small piece of herself, laid bare for the world to hear. As she records the final tracks, Clara feels a sense of pride she's never felt before. She's not just performing music, she's creating it, shaping it with her own hands. She's in control now, and that feeling is more powerful than any spotlight. The night of the album release approaches, and Clara's excitement builds with each passing day. She's chosen a small, intimate venue to hold her release party, surrounded by friends, family, and the fans who have supported her through the highs and lows. It's not a massive event with flashing cameras and media buzz. It's simple, genuine, and personal. The night before the release, Clara stands in front of the mirror in her dressing room, looking at the woman she's become. The woman who took risks, who fought for her voice, and who refused to let the world define her. She's made it, not because of the label or the industry, but because she stayed true to herself. "I did it," she whispers to her reflection, a sense of peace washing over her. She's ready for whatever comes next, but she knows one thing for sure: she's finally living her truth. The next evening, the venue is packed with fans eagerly waiting for the first live performance of the songs from Clara's new album. The energy in the room is electric, and Clara takes the stage, heart pounding with excitement. As the first chords of her new song fill the air, she feels an overwhelming rush of gratitude and anticipation. She's exactly where she's meant to be. Each song flows with ease, her connection to the audience deepening with every note. Clara is no longer performing for anyone but herself. And as she looks out at the crowd, she sees their faces, their smiles, their eyes filled with emotion. She knows that her music has touched them in the way she always dreamed it would. The night ends with a standing ovation, but Clara doesn't feel the usual pressure to be perfect. She feels free, finally at peace with the journey she's taken. As she leaves the stage, the applause still echoing in her ears, she knows that this is just the beginning. There will be more challenges ahead, more decisions to make, but for the first time, Clara Moretti is fully in control of her story. The road less traveled. In the weeks following her album release, Clara settles into a new rhythm. Her decision to go independent, to release her music on her own terms, has proven to be the right one. The album, while not a chart-topping phenomenon, is steadily gaining traction. Her fan base is loyal, growing steadily through word of mouth, and the intimate shows she plays are filled with an energy she's never felt before. There's a sense of freedom in it all. Without the pressure to conform to a major label's expectations, Clara's music is exactly what she wants it to be: raw, honest, and personal. She's not chasing after trends or industry standards. She's simply telling her story, and the people who resonate with it are the ones she's meant to reach. But despite the success of the album and the newfound freedom, there are moments when Clara feels isolated. The music industry is a machine, and while she's opted out of its most glaring demands, it hasn't stopped grinding on. Some of her friends and family are supportive, but others, especially those still invested in her potential as a mainstream artist, begin to question her choice. One evening, after a small but well-received show in San Francisco, Clara sits in the hotel room, her guitar resting beside her, her mind swirling. She's gotten several offers from smaller labels since going independent, each one more tempting than the last. They promise increased visibility, more resources, and the ability to reach a larger audience. The offers are appealing, but Clara knows the moment she signs anything, the independence she's worked so hard to maintain will slip away. A knock at the door interrupts her thoughts. She opens it to find James, holding a couple of cups of coffee. "I thought you might need this," he says with a grin, stepping into the room. "Thanks," Clara says, taking the cup. She pauses, looking out the window at the city lights. "I've been thinking about the labels, the offers, everything." James sits down beside her, handing her the coffee. "I thought you might be. It's hard not to, when everything seems so shiny and easy." Clara sighs, her fingers tracing the rim of the cup. "I don't want to go back to that world. Not the way it was. But these offers, they feel like I'm missing out on something. Like I'm holding myself back." James leans back, his gaze steady but understanding. "You're not holding yourself back, Clara. You're building something new. It's not the path everyone expects, and that's exactly why it's worth taking." Clara nods, but the doubt still lingers in her chest. She's doing this alone, no major label, no large team behind her. It's risky, uncertain, and the pressure is heavy. But deep down, she knows James is right. This is her choice. This is her road. "Thanks, James," Clara says softly, her voice filled with quiet resolve. "I needed to hear that." "Anytime," James replies with a smile. "You're gonna be just fine. Just keep doing what you're doing." The next morning, Clara wakes up with a sense of clarity. She decides to reject the offers from the labels, to stay true to her independent path. She'll continue building her fan base, releasing music when she feels ready, and maintaining control of her own career. It's not going to be easy, but it's the only path that feels right. However, as Clara prepares for the next show, she receives an unexpected call from Elliot. It's been months since they last spoke, and she's surprised to hear from him. "I've been following your journey," Elliot says on the other end of the line, his voice calm. "And I wanted to check in, see how you're doing." Clara is quiet for a moment, unsure of how to respond. She still doesn't entirely trust him, but part of her is curious. "I'm doing well," she says cautiously. "Busy, but I'm figuring things out." "I saw you turn down those offers," Elliot says, as if reading her mind. "You've got guts, Clara. I respect that." She doesn't know what to say. There's something about the way he speaks, almost as if he's been watching her, keeping tabs on her decisions. "Why are you calling me, Elliot?" Clara finally asks, her voice steady but guarded. "I just wanted you to know that you're doing the right thing," he replies. "You've got the talent, and if you stay true to yourself, you'll make it without anyone's help. You don't need the labels." "I believe that." Clara feels a strange mix of relief and unease. Is this a genuine sentiment, or is he trying to lure her back into the fold of the industry? She can't tell, but for the first time, she realizes that he may be right. "Thanks," Clara says finally, her voice quieter now. "But I'm doing things my way. I don't need to play by the rules anymore." Elliot pauses, his voice softer now. "I respect that. Keep going, Clara. You've got something special. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." As the call ends, Clara sits in silence for a moment. She doesn't know why Elliot reached out, but his words linger in her mind. Maybe he's not the villain she once thought he was. Maybe he understands more than she gives him credit for. The tour continues, and Clara becomes more comfortable in her skin, more confident in her choices. She's playing shows in smaller venues, where the connection with the audience feels more intimate, more real. Her songs are resonating with people, and she knows that she's building something that's going to last. But there are still days when the doubt creeps in. The fear that she's missing out on something bigger, that she's not doing enough. The world moves fast, and Clara wonders if her refusal to sign with a label will hold her back. But each time she steps on stage, she knows she's made the right choice. The energy she feels from her fans, the honesty in her music, it's all worth it. One evening after a show in Portland, Clara sits alone in the backstage dressing room, exhausted but satisfied. She's just finished performing her newest song, one that's taken months to write and perfect. It's deeply personal, a reflection of the challenges she's faced and the strength she's found within herself. She's scrolling through her phone when she comes across a message from Daniela. "You've come so far, Clara. I'm so proud of you. You're making a name for yourself, and you're doing it the right way." Clara smiles, her heart swelling with gratitude. Daniela's unwavering support has been a lifeline throughout this journey. Clara knows that no matter where the road takes her, her true success isn't measured in album sales or record deals. It's in the way she stays true to herself. The chapter ends with Clara sitting in the dressing room, her guitar by her side, watching the city lights through the window. The road ahead is uncertain, but for the first time, she feels certain of one thing, She's not just following a dream anymore. She's creating her own path, and it's exactly where she's meant to be. The full circle. Clara sits at the edge of the stage, her guitar resting across her lap. The venue is quiet now, the hum of the crowd's energy still lingering in the air after the final song. This was her last stop on the tour, the final show before she returns home. As she looks out into the empty theater, she feels a mix of exhaustion and peace. This tour has been everything she needed and more, challenging, rewarding, and full of moments that she will carry with her for the rest of her life. The past few years have been a whirlwind of change, decisions, and growth. From the naive, uncertain girl who sang to an empty room at the Gilded Hearth to the woman who now stands at the forefront of her own career, Clara's journey has been anything but ordinary. She's fought for her voice, for her freedom, and now she's found a place where she can be both herself and an artist in the truest sense. As she reflects, Clara realizes how much has changed within her too. She's no longer afraid of the unknown, no longer bound by fear of failure or the need for validation from others. She's accepted that the road ahead will never be predictable or easy, but it will always be hers to walk. The final show was a success. The crowd had been electric, their energy infectious. She had given everything she had, pouring her heart into every song, and the response had been nothing short of incredible. After the encore, as the lights dimmed and she stepped off stage, Clara knew this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where she would continue to write her own story, on her own terms. She stands up, her body aching from the tour, but her heart light. The manager comes to greet her, giving her a congratulatory hug. "You did it, Clara. You were incredible." "Thank you," Clara says, her voice filled with gratitude. She's come to realize that the people who truly matter in her life are the ones who have supported her, not because of her fame, but because they believed in her as an artist and as a person. She walks into the dressing room, where James is waiting. "I can't believe it's over," Clara says, sitting down on the couch, taking a deep breath. "It feels like a dream." James smiles, sitting beside her. "You did it your way, Clara. That's what matters most. And you made it. You didn't need anyone to tell you what to do. You figured it out on your own." Clara looks at him, her eyes filled with a sense of peace she's never known before. "I couldn't have done it without you, James. Without Daniela, without the people who've always believed in me. This journey has been as much about finding myself as it has been about sharing my music with the world." "You found your voice, Clara," James says. "And that's something no one can take from you." As she looks around the room, Clara realizes that the world she's built for herself is one where she is free to create, to express, and to evolve. The music industry may be unpredictable, but her path is her own, and that's the most valuable thing she has. The phone rings and Clara answers it, her heart skipping a beat as she hears Daniela's excited voice on the other end. "Clara, the album's charting higher than ever. The independent route was the best decision you ever made." Clara smiles, feeling her heart swell with pride. "I know. I finally feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." After the call, she takes a moment to breathe in the quiet of the room, the calm after the storm of the tour. She's ready to go home, to reconnect with herself and her roots. She's done everything she set out to do, and she's done it her way. The road ahead will still be full of challenges, but Clara knows that she's ready for whatever comes next. As the tour buses are packed up and the team begins to wrap up, Clara takes one last look at the venue. She's made it, not because of the fame or the offers or the industry's promises, but because she stayed true to who she is, every step of the way. The chapter ends with Clara walking outside, the cool evening air brushing her skin as she gazes up at the starry sky. She knows the world will keep moving, the demands will keep coming, but she'll keep singing her own song. She's done it before, and she'll do it again. For herself, for the music, for the truth of who she is. And as the world watches, Clara Moretti will keep creating because, in the end, it's her story to tell, and no one else's.